Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever felt like time just drags on when you're stuck doing something boring? Well, today we're diving into a new study that looks at boredom not as a single feeling, but as a moving target that can actually predict how long we'll stick with something tough. Imagine you're running on a treadmill and it's getting harder and harder. You might start feeling bored, but does that boredom stay the same or does it change? And how does that change affect whether you keep going or give up? This study explores just that. So scientists wanted to understand this dynamic nature of boredom. They know boredom signals that an activity isn't valuable enough and our resources are being wasted. This signals us to look for something more interesting. But how do these feelings of boredom actually shift over time, especially when you're pushing yourself physically? Most studies look at boredom across different situations or over long periods, but not much on how it changes minute by minute during a challenging task. To figure this out, the researchers designed a pretty straightforward experiment. They had participants cycle on an exercise bike. The resistance on the bike gradually increased every few minutes. This meant the physical effort required kept going up. While they were cycling, participants were asked every single minute to rate how bored they felt on a scale of 0 to 10. They also rated their perceived physical and cognitive effort. They kept going until they voluntarily decided to stop. They got 61 people to participate in this study. Everyone was told they would get paid for their time and a bonus for every minute they cycled. This was to encourage them to push themselves towards exhaustion to really see what happens when things get tough. So picture this, you hop on the bike, the resistance starts low, and you pedal away. Every minute a little prompt pops up asking you to rate your boredom, physical effort, and mental effort. The bike keeps getting harder and harder and you keep rating your feelings. Some people might have stopped after just 9 minutes while others pedaled 45 minutes. This figure gives you a great overview of what the experiment was like. You can see the resistance increasing and the frequent prompts for ratings. Now, how do you make sense of all these minute-by-minute ratings from different people who cycled for different lengths of time? That's where some cool math comes in. They used a method called functional principal component analysis, or FPCA. Think of it like this. Instead of just looking at the average boredom score, they looked at the whole shape of each person's boredom experience over time. This analysis helps them find the main patterns of how boredom changes across all the participants. It helps them see if people generally get more bored, less bored, or stay about the same. First off, the results showed that physical and cognitive effort definitely went up as expected. People felt the bike getting harder and harder mentally and physically. But here is where it gets interesting. Boredom was a different story. While on average boredom slightly decreased over the entire task, meaning people maybe got a little less bored towards the end, the most striking thing was the huge difference between individuals. Some people started off quite bored and stayed that way. Others felt bored, but their boredom decreased. Some had low boredom throughout, and a few even had rising boredom. This basically means there isn't just one way to experience boredom during a tough task. This figure really highlights that heterogeneity. You can see different groups of people with really different boredom patterns. Some had their boredom go down over time, others had it go up, and some stayed pretty steady. They even found 4 distinct patterns or clusters of boredom experiences. Now, for the really crucial part, what does this mean for performance? Did how bored people felt affect how long they kept cycling? The answer is yes, but not in the way you might expect. It wasn't just about how bored you were overall. It was about how your boredom changed. The researchers found that the trend of boredom was what mattered. If your boredom was increasing over time, you tended to quit sooner. But if your boredom was decreasing over time, you tended to cycle longer. This was true even after they accounted for how much physical and mental effort people felt they were putting in. That's a really significant finding because it suggests that boredom is not just a passive feeling, it's an active signal that influences our decisions. This table summarizes those regression analyses. You can see that the boredom trend is influencing time to failure. The bolded confidence intervals show that the effect is statistically significant. Notice how the boredom trend has a pretty strong and consistent influence across different models. So what does this mean for us in the real world? The study suggests that boredom isn't this one-size-fits-all experience. It's dynamic and it varies a lot from person to person. More importantly, the way boredom changes over time seems to be a key factor in how long we stick with challenging tasks. If boredom is rising, it's like our brain is saying, this isn't worth it anymore, it's time to stop. But if boredom is falling, that might mean we are finding our groove or the task is becoming more manageable in a way that keeps us engaged. This research provides strong evidence that we shouldn't think of boredom as a static state. It's a process. And by looking at the dynamics, the changes over time, we can gain a deeper understanding of how it influences our behavior. This has implications for everything from exercise to work to any situation where sustained effort is required. Of course, no study is perfect. The researchers themselves point out that they didn't directly measure things like how fit people were or their tendency to get bored easily in general. They used weekly exercise as a proxy for fitness. Also, this was an observational study, so while they found a link, they can't definitely say boredom causes people to quit. It just seems to be a really strong predictor. Future research could try to manipulate boredom levels to see if that directly changes quitting behavior. So to wrap it all up, boring tasks don't always make us equally bored, and how our boredom changes over time can actually tell us a lot about how long we'll stick with something. The key takeaway is that the trend, the direction of change in boredom matters more than just the overall level. This is a step towards seeing behavioral science as a temporal science one that understands how things change over time. This research is fascinating because it highlights that our internal states like boredom are constantly in motion, and these movements have real consequences for our actions. It encourages us to pay attention, not just to if we feel bored, but how that boredom is evolving. What do you think about these findings? Does this resonate with your own experiences? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more breakdowns of interesting psychology research. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.